I'm curious what you're seeing right now with Hurricane Dorian in terms of its speed. We've seen it, slow down, and I'm curious what that means to you in terms of its impact.
Well, Dorian is essentially completely stalled over the northern Bahamas, moving at about 1 knot westward, which is kind of like a really slow walk through the park. Storms that don't move are more hazardous storms. For rainfall, it's just sitting there dumping rain on a particular location for a longer period of time, so you get more accumulated rainfall. You get those winds driving a wall of water, the surge, onto the coast for a longer period of time, so more builds up, and you just get more accumulated wind damage because it's there for a longer time. So stalling storms are really pretty hazardous. You'd rather have, if you're going to have a hurricane hit you, you'd rather have it blow through you really quickly than stall on top of you.
What patterns have led to this? What can we compare this to?
Around the time Florence was stalling and we were looking back at Harvey, and we were interested to see, was there a trend where storms are becoming, more apt to stall, increased frequency of stalling. And Jim, my colleague, had written a paper the year before that showed that on a global scale, storms were on average moving more slowly since the mid-20th century, roughly. They don't just move more slowly on average, like they were moving 10 miles per hour, now they're moving 8 miles per hour, all of them. Actually, the downward trend in their rate of propagation is driven in part by just an increased tendency to stall out. So that drives the average down, but really it's those stalls that are really the most hazardous. So we looked and we defined, we had to come up with...
Yeah, how do you define a stall?
What we decided was if the storm spends 48 or more hours in a region of 200-kilometer radius, and we've done average, a few percent of storms in the Atlantic will stall like that, but that percentage seems to be increasing in time.
One of the obvious questions when we are talking about the likelihood of hurricanes to stall is why? Why are they even more likely to stall? What are the weather patterns that are creating this atmosphere?
We can look at the meteorological conditions that are leading to the stalling event of that particular storm. That's one question. The other question is, in the long term, over many decades, what would be causing changes, a trend in those meteorological conditions that would lead to, a greater chance of stalling? The question, well, why are you getting a trend over many years?
That was my next question.
Right.
Why are you getting a trend over many years?
So that is it's a deep question, and unfortunately, I have to say that it's really at or slightly beyond our understanding of hurricanes and a changing climate. I like to talk about the climate change impacts on hurricane hazard as kind of a hierarchy from what we know best to what is the most speculative. And what we know best is actually not even related to climate change as such. It's that if there's more population and infrastructure in harm's way, you're going to get more damage, right? Number two is that one of the most robust projections of a changing climate is increased sea level. So even if hurricane statistics weren't changing, you're just blowing the same winds over a higher baseline of water, you're going to get deeper flood penetration inland. That's robust. Number three, almost as robust, is the fact that you get more rainfall in a warmer climate because a warmer air can hold more water in the vapor form. So when the conditions are right, as they are in a mature hurricane, you're just going to dump more rain. So now when we get below that, we get to sort of the less certain, more speculative, and that's about climate change impacts on a storm's propagation, including slowing down the translation rate and stalling. There's some evidence, but it's contentious right now in the community, but there's some evidence that the large-scale wind patterns in the tropical regions of the atmosphere are slowing down. And it's not clear why this is happening, but it could be because of changing patterns in vertical temperature profiles in the atmosphere due to a warming climate, and that has an impact through a long chain of cause and effect.
Okay.
Large-scale wind patterns in the tropics.
So there is that one strand of...
The case is definitely open, and there are a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross.
Yeah. So there is that one strand of thinking that does relate it back to a warming climate.
Right now, it's sort of like we don't really know, but we have a possible suspect, and we don't really have any other suspects, so focusing on the one possible suspect.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.